Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we don't just skim the surface of complex research. We really blast right through the layers to get to those critical nuggets of knowledge.
And today we are undertaking, well, a massive and really crucial deep dive. We're looking into a world defined by connection, by complexity.
Right.
We're examining the intersection of digital security, the huge evolving threats from all these interconnected devices, everything from the Internet of Things, IoT, to operational technology, OT.
And how that fragility, that digital weakness, actually impacts the real world, how we manage cities, health, our daily lives.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Our source material for this conversation is pretty diverse and frankly quite exciting. We're kind of marrying the theory with the practical side of things. We've got academic analyses on like next-gen cyber threats and smart city design, historical stuff, tracing how information security thinking evolved.
And then grounding it all with recent city government briefings. Real-world stuff showing the day-to-day struggles cities face dealing with all this interconnectedness.
Yeah, the governance challenges.
Our mission here is pretty straightforward. We want to connect the dots for you, the listener. We want to show how, say, a strategic decision to target some industrial control system way over on the other side of the globe, how that actually has a direct functional link to how your local city council decides to budget for fixing potholes or, making garbage collection routes more efficient. It's really all one ecosystem now.
And just to ground this immediately, let's talk scale. The risk we're facing. Here's a figure that should frankly make anyone in security pause. IoT devices, your smart home stuff, network, factory sensors, city cameras.
Yeah.
They face roughly 820,000 attacks daily.
Oh, damn.
Every single day. That's just the staggering, relentless volume of digital threat we're under right now. Every 24 hours.
That is an overwhelming number.
Yeah.
And it just proves that the old idea of a secure perimeter, it doesn't exist anymore, does it?
Real.
Every single device, whether it's, managing your thermostat at home or controlling a critical piece of city infrastructure, it's an endpoint. And it has to be secured.
Which immediately highlights why vigilance is so key, both personally and in business. And speaking of security, we do want to take a moment to thank our sponsors.
Right.
This deep dive into cyber defense and connected systems really hammers home how vital basic security is, whether you're protecting your home network or a huge enterprise setup. So we appreciate the support of www.securiat.house for securing your home environment and www.securiatoffice.world for supporting robust business security solutions. Okay, section 1. Let's dive into the critical vulnerabilities in this massively connected world. We mentioned that 820,000 daily attacks figure. That huge volume hits the vast and often pretty unprotected surface area of the IoT. But the really high-stakes targets, they aren't necessarily your smart speaker, are they? It's the stuff that actually runs the physical world.
That's the crucial difference, yeah. We're talking about operational technology, or OT environments. These are the industrial control systems, SCADA systems, the things managing power grids, water treatment plants, factories, pipelines.
The heavy stuff.
Exactly. And unlike typical IT systems, if there's a breach here, it doesn't just mean someone stole data. It means real physical disruption, potentially catastrophic disruption.
And the data we looked at shows attackers absolutely get this. They understand the leverage they have here.
Oh, absolutely. Attackers know that hitting essential services creates maximum pressure. We've seen ransomware attacks specifically going after OT systems jump by a huge 46%.
46%? Wow.
Yeah. And this isn't just random malware spray and pray. This surge shows a deliberate, calculated shift by attackers. They're targeting industrial gear, utilities, because they know the cost of downtime is so incredibly high, it almost forces a payout.
And if we narrow that focus even more, say, to healthcare, the stakes jump again, don't they? From just infrastructure damage to, immediate risks to human life. The Internet of Medical Things, IoT.
In healthcare, the financial fallout is just staggering. The average cost of an IoT breach, it's now over $10 million.
$10 million.
Per breach. And that huge number isn't just the IT cleanup cost, fixing servers. It includes massive regulatory fines, long downtimes causing surgical delays, or hospitals diverting patients.
Right.
And increasingly, the cost of lawsuits when patient care and safety are compromised. It's a fundamental breakdown of trust and function.
Okay, let's step back a bit and unpack this threat landscape by looking at the history. The need for information security didn't just pop up with the internet, right? How did the philosophy of security evolve before computers?
It's fascinating, actually. You trace the roots back to, like, basic procedural controls and military needs. Take Julius Caesar, around 50 BC. He's often credited with the Caesar cipher.
Right, simple substitution.
Simple substitution, yeah. But it was a shift, right? From just trusting the messenger to having a way to protect the information itself, even if the message got intercepted. For centuries after that, security was mostly physical and procedural, marking documents secret, using trusted couriers, lockboxes, that kind of thing.
But things got way more complex in the 20th century.
Totally exploded. World War II really forced the birth of modern information security as we kind of know it. Just the sheer amount of sensitive info being shared between allied countries demanded it.
So that's where classification came from.
Exactly. That era formalized classification systems, top secret, confidential, all those markings. They defined who could handle what documents, under what rules. And of course, the ultimate example from that time is cracking the German Enigma machine.
Alan Turing, Bletchley Park.
Right. Alan Turing and his team. That wasn't just about securing your own information, it was successfully breaking the enemy's encryption. It showed the immense power you get from cryptographic control.
And yet, when we first started linking computers together, it seems like all those hard-won lessons were, I don't know, almost forgotten. Why was security such an afterthought in the early internet?
It really came down to philosophy, I think. Early systems like ARPANET back in 1973, they were built by researchers for researchers. It was about trust and cooperation, not defense.
Right, sharing information.
Exactly. And pioneers like Robert Metcalfe quickly found the basic flaws. Passwords were easy to guess, dial-up procedures were insecure, user ID was flazy, phone numbers were often public, so hackers could basically just walk right in. The running joke back then was that network security really meant network insecurity. The goal was connection first, security much, much later.
And that inherent weakness, that fragility, led directly to the Robert Morris worm in 1988. That must have been a massive wake-up call.
Oh, it was huge, monumental. Remember, in 1988, the internet was tiny, maybe 60,000 computers connected, mostly big mainframes, mini computers at universities and labs.
Tiny by today's standards.
Right. Then on November 2nd, this first self-replicating internet worm gets launched. It didn't destroy data, but it demanded processor time and just replicated like crazy, grinding those 60,000 machines down to a crawl.
Wow.
The damage was instant, widespread. It showed the entire tech world, look, connectivity is powerful, but it's also a vulnerability. A small bit of code could cause global chaos.
So fast forward to today. We've learned that lesson, hopefully, but the attackers will learn too, right? They scaled up. You can't fight today's AI-powered threats with 1988 defense strategies.
You absolutely cannot. The whole defense game has shifted away from just static analysis. Traditionally, we relied a lot on the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, CVSS scores.
Right, ranking vulnerabilities 1 to 10.
Exactly. But the problem is, a theoretical score of, say, 9.8 doesn't mean much if your specific network setup makes it impossible to actually exploit that flaw.
Okay.
So modern defense is moving radically towards AI-powered risk prioritization.
And what's the key difference there between the old CVSS way and this new AI-driven approach?
The big insight is this. AI and machine learning can analyze exploitability based on real-world conditions. They look at your specific network architecture, your unique device settings, and live threat intelligence. Are attackers actually using this flaw in the wild right now?
So it's moving from theoretical danger to actual immediate risk.
Precisely. It's context-specific, applied exploitability. This lets organizations focus their, let's face it, limited patching resources, where they'll have the biggest impact on reducing actual measurable risk, not just chasing high scores.
That focus on systems and managing them properly brings us to standards and compliance, global standards.
Absolutely crucial. The complexity we're dealing with now demands standardization. Global efforts like ISO/IEC 27771 that sets the requirements for an information security management system, and the ITIL framework for IT service management. These are vital. They give organizations the blueprints they need to build complete, defensible systems that use resources well and make sure security goals line up with business goals. Basically, they help ensure different parts of a global network are speaking the same security language.
And we see these kinds of security advances filtering down even to everyday things like paying for stuff. The financial sector has always been a testing ground, hasn't it?
Definitely. Think about the chip in your credit card, the EMV chip from Visa and MasterCard. That fundamentally changed the game for in-person card security.
Right.
Beyond that, banks have brought in things like those little handheld card readers for secure online transactions, like the chip authentication program. And for really high-trust digital stuff, we now have mobile signatures.
Using your phone's SIM card.
Exactly. Leveraging the embedded SIM to create legally binding electronic signatures. These developments show that advanced security isn't just for spies and governments anymore. It's being woven into daily life to make commerce possible and digital actions legally solid.
The pace is just incredible. Which brings us nicely to the sort of foundational ideas that underpin everything we've just talked about. But before we get into those pillars, let's quickly thank our sponsors again.
Good idea.
Securing all these different endpoints, whether they're in your house or your company network, that's really the essential first step in managing the huge risk landscape we just described. So thank you to www.securiaut.house and www.securiautoffice.world.
Okay, information security, InfoSec. It can sound really technical, maybe intimidating, lots of acronyms, complex software. But at its heart, it's basically about protecting information by managing risk, right? What's the core idea?
The absolute core principle is the CIA triad. It stands for the balanced protection of confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Confidentiality, integrity, availability. Okay.
Yeah. Confidentiality means keeping secret, preventing unauthorized disclosure. Integrity means ensuring the information is accurate, that it hasn't been tampered with. And availability means making sure authorized users can actually get to the information when they need it. But that word balanced seems really important there, because pushing hard on one often means giving ground on another, doesn't it? In the real world.
That's exactly the challenge. It's a constant balancing act. If you maximize availability, say, keep a system online constantly with very few checks, you often have to compromise a bit on confidentiality or integrity.
Makes sense.
And the reverse is true, too. Maximum confidentiality needs really strict controls, which might slow things down or make access harder, reducing availability. The real art of InfoSec is managing that trade-off efficiently. You need policies, but they can't be so clunky that they kill productivity, because if they do...
people just find ways around them.
Exactly. They bypass the controls and you're worse off than before.
So if the CIA triad is the goal, then risk management is the process, the way we try to achieve it. And given the complexity we talked about with OT and IoT, this feels like maybe the most critical process for any connected organization.
Risk management is absolutely central. It's the structured, ongoing approach. It's this iterative cycle. Identify your vulnerabilities, identify the threats to your information resources, and then systematically decide which countermeasures to put in place to bring that risk down to an acceptable level.
Which you call residual risk.
Residual risk, right. The risk that's left over after you've put controls in place. And it's crucial to remember this isn't a one-and-done checklist. It has to be constant, always reassessing.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Walk us through the 6 steps of risk assessment from our sources, maybe using an example. How about that municipal water treatment plant control system we mentioned earlier, a classic OT setup?
Perfect example. Okay, the 6 steps. 1, identify your assets and estimate their value. For the water plant, assets are the pumps, the valves, the control software, the SCADA servers, the engineers running it, and the value. It's not just the replacement cost of a server. It's the immense cost of the city not having clean water.
Right, the societal cost.
Huge. 2, conduct a threat assessment. What could go wrong? Physical sabotage, sure. Extreme weather, maybe. But critically, malicious cyber acts like ransomware targeting those industrial controls, or even insider threats.
Okay.
3, conduct a vulnerability assessment. Where are the weaknesses? Is the control system running an old unpatched OS? Are their default passwords still active? What's the chance an attacker could actually exploit that weakness? 4, calculate the impact of each threat hitting each asset. If ransomware locks up that SCADA system, the impact is potentially catastrophic. Public health crisis, long outage, huge cost. This needs serious analysis, both qualitative, what kind of damage, and quantitative, how much damage, in dollars or downtime.
Yeah.
Identify, select, and implement appropriate controls. And the key word here is appropriate. The response has to be proportional. We might implement network segmentation, strong authentication like MFA, but maybe not a control so strict it stops engineers from making vital real-time adjustments to keep the water flowing safely. You have to weigh the control's cost and hassle against the asset's value.
Okay.
Always balance. 6, evaluate the effectiveness of those controls. You can't just install them and walk away. You have to constantly test, are the network segments really separate? Do penetration tests find ways around the MFA? You need to keep checking that the residual risk is actually staying at that acceptable level.
This whole process brings us right to legal and ethical responsibility. When something does go wrong, it's not just seen as an IT mistake anymore, is it? It can become a failure of leadership, corporate, or municipal.
Absolutely. Because legal frameworks like the federal sentencing guidelines in the U.S. hold corporate officers personally liable if they fail to exercise two key responsibilities: due care and due diligence. This is really the foundation of organizational responsibility in this area.
Okay, we hear those terms a lot, due care, due diligence. What's the actual difference between them?
Think of it like this. Due care is about taking the initial reasonable steps to demonstrate you're being responsible. It's setting the standard. For the water plant, due care is writing the policy. We will implement multi-factor authentication on all remote access points. It's a specific, verifiable action or standard.
Like a setting a rule.
Right. Due diligence, on the other hand, is the ongoing, continuous activity to make sure those protections are actually maintained and working. It's the process of doing the work. Actively checking system logs, applying security patches every week, auditing who has MFA enabled, ensuring the standard set by due care is consistently met. Due care defines the what, due diligence is the how, and the keeping it going.
And this legal picture gets even more complex with things like the DOC-EA standard.
Right, the Duty of Care Risk Analysis Standard, DOC-EA. It's become more relevant partly because we're seeing so much more litigation after data breaches. DOC-EA helps organizations figure out if the safeguards they've chosen are appropriate. Meaning, do they reasonably protect others, customers, citizens from harm, while also presenting a reasonable burden on the organization itself? It's that tightrope again. It's not enough to just have a policy. You might need to show that the chosen policy provided adequate protection without, say, bankrupting the company to implement it. It's about reasonableness and justification in the face of potential harm.
This constant tension liability, duty, cost, seems to explain why calculating the total financial impact of a breach is so incredibly hard. If we can't reliably figure out the cost of failure, how can organizations justify the budget needed for proper due diligence?
That really is the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? There's just no single standard agreed-upon way to calculate the total cost of a security incident. The numbers we have are often anecdotal or based on specific types of costs.
Like those 2003 estimates.
Exactly. Back in 2003, you saw estimates ranging wildly from $13 billion, just looking at worms and viruses, all the way up to $226 billion, trying to capture all forms of covert attacks. The difficulty is catching everything. Yeah, the system cleanup costs, but also the lost reputation, the legal fees, the competitive disadvantage if intellectual property was stolen.
And maybe hardest to quantify.
The opportunity cost, all the resources you had to divert to fixing the mess instead of doing something productive, it's notoriously difficult to put a single reliable number on it.
Before we take these ideas, security structures, risk management, and apply them to the biggest organizational asset of all, the city itself, let's pause for another quick thank you.
Sounds good.
The complexity we just outlined, especially that shift towards AI-driven real-world defense, it really underlines the challenge of securing these huge, sprawling networks. We thank our sponsors, www.securit.house, for helping secure your connected home devices, and www.securityoffice.world for supporting robust security solutions for businesses. All right, we spent time defining how organizations manage risk. Now let's scale that up. Let's apply that risk structure when the asset isn't just a company, but an entire interconnected city, the smart city. This idea is way more than just putting in faster internet cables, isn't it?
Oh, completely. It's fundamentally about multidimensional integration. A smart city uses information and communication technologies, ICT, to directly try and increase the citizens' quality of life. By weaving together technology, public infrastructure, data flows, city services, and crucially security protection, all hopefully operating within some kind of unified platform. It's an environment where connectivity is like the defining feature.
So what are the key technologies making this massive integration actually possible?
Well, there are several core clusters. You've got distributed sensor networks, sensors everywhere collecting real-time data on traffic, air quality, noise levels, you name it. Then mobile platforms to deliver services right to citizens' phones. big data analytics and cloud computing are essential to process all that information, and machine learning to find patterns, optimize things, maybe even predict needs.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the research also points to digital signatures as being a really high priority for users themselves.
Digital signatures. Why do they stand out alongside big data and sensors?
Because they directly address two key user needs: convenience and trust. Digital signatures allow for flexible, dynamic, real-time, legally valid interactions.
Ah, okay.
When you, as a citizen, can securely and instantly sign an official document or access protected data from a city service on your phone, it kind of validates the whole promise of the smart city, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Speed combined with verifiable integrity, it makes it feel real and useful.
But weaving all this tech together comes with a huge social risk. And that risk seems fundamentally human. The research we looked at suggests that how safe residents feel is ultimately the bedrock for whether smart cities actually succeed or fail.
This is absolutely core to the humanistic view of urban development. Extensive surveys of city residents show that their safety experience, basically, their gut feeling of trust that the system won't harm them, won't leak their private data, won't fail critically, that feeling is foundational.
Foundational to what?
It directly affects how useful and convenient they perceive the smart city services to be, and ultimately that drives their overall subjective well-being, or SWB, their sense of happiness and satisfaction with life in the city.
So let's say the city installs super efficient smart streetlights that save energy. Great. But if residents are worried the cameras embedded in them are constantly recording their movements and storing that data insecurely,
Then the perceived usefulness and convenience of those smart lights plummets.
exactly. Safety, especially privacy and security concerns, acts as this critical mediator. If safety isn't guaranteed, or at least perceived to be guaranteed, then the benefits of usefulness and convenience are massively reduced. And that desired boost to subjective well-being, it just doesn't happen.
Right. Convenience means nothing if you feel watched or vulnerable using the service.
Precisely. Convenience, which the studies define as, the time and effort saved using smart infrastructure or services, it becomes almost irrelevant if the underlying feeling is one of insecurity.
And it's important to stress, this isn't just a concern for people who are maybe resistant to technology. The data shows skepticism even among people who use these services frequently.
That's a key governance challenge, yeah. The survey showed that while maybe 2/3 of residents are light or heavy users of smart services, there's this persistent group, about 11% to 13% of well-educated people who remain concerned.
And their main reason: explicitly privacy and security concerns. This suggests that citizens who are more informed about the technology are often the most skeptical. They demand transparency in how the system works, clear security policies, before they're willing to fully buy in and trust these systems.
This inherent tension, this need for trust, feeds directly into the bigger picture goal of sustainable urban development, doesn't it? The aim isn't just cool tech, it's long-term viability for the city and its people.
Exactly. Sustainable development, classically defined, is about meeting the needs of the present economic, ecological, social needs without screwing things up for future generations.
Right. Don't compromise the future.
In the city context, achieving that balance absolutely requires active citizen participation in making decisions. If residents aren't involved in shaping how the city evolves, the solutions planners come up with, no matter how technologically slick, might just fail to meet real community needs or reflect local culture.
But how does a huge city government actually do that? How do you operationalize citizen participation in a meaningful way, beyond just, suggestion boxes or online surveys?
Well, participation isn't just one thing. It exists on a spectrum of influence. At the low end, you have simply informing people, putting info on websites, sending out leaflets.
Okay, one-way street.
Pretty much. Then you move up to consultation. That's where your surveys, focus groups, town hall meetings come in, gathering feedback.
Two-way, but maybe limited power.
Often, yeah. But the highest level is genuine citizen power. This means citizens are actually involved in shared decision-making. And a really powerful tool for this is participatory budgeting.
Participatory budgeting, what does that mean in practice?
It's a process where residents get to directly decide how to allocate a specific portion of the public budget, maybe for neighborhood improvements, parks, local projects.
So they get a real say in where the money goes.
A real say. And it's powerful because when citizens are directly involved in spending decisions, it naturally increases transparency and makes the government more accountable. It can be a really effective way to curb inefficiency because people are watching where their priorities are being funded. It forces a kind of shared hard public prioritization.
Okay, let's pivot now from the sort of theoretical model of the secure, sustainable, participatory smart city and really stress test it against the messy reality of day-to-day urban management. We've got a great case study here from the Dallas Community Survey results from 2025. It gives us a statistically valid snapshot of what residents actually care about most when push comes to shove.
Yeah, the survey data is basically the voice of the citizens speaking directly to City Hall, and it shows where the city really needs to focus its, always limited budget and staff time. The results are pretty stark and consistent over time, too.
What are the top priorities?
Year after year, the top two overall priorities for city services are maintenance of infrastructure, think roads, pipes, basic upkeep, and police services. Public safety. These seem to be just fundamental expectations people have of city life, and they don't shift much.
But the really juicy insight isn't just what's important, it's where the city is falling short, right? Where satisfaction doesn't match the importance level.
Exactly. That's where the city finds its most urgent opportunities for improvement. If you look at that, quadrant services people say are highly important, but where they also report low satisfaction infrastructure maintenance and police services are sitting right there. Big gap between expectation and reality.
Okay.
And following pretty closely behind them are things like social services, traffic management, and housing issues. This basically tells City Hall, if you want to make residents feel better about the city, you've got to fix the potholes and ensure people feel safe first. Those are table stakes.
On a slightly more positive note, the survey did show an improvement in perception around one long-standing urban challenge.
Yeah, the perception of homelessness as a major problem, it actually dropped quite a bit in the 2025 survey. It fell to 65% saying it was a major problem, down from 75% just 2 years earlier.
It's still high at 65%, but a noticeable drop.
Definitely still a huge problem, but that 10-point drop suggests maybe visible city efforts or perhaps shifts in public awareness are starting to change how residents perceive the scale of the crisis. Could be a positive sign.
Now let's zoom in on a really specific operational example where, efficiency goals just slam head-on into resident expectations and habits. That sanitation debate in Dallas, the one detailed in the municipal sources, it got pretty heated, apparently.
Oh, yeah, garbage collection can be surprisingly emotional. This is a perfect little microcosm of how hard governance can be. So the city currently uses alley pickup for garbage in a lot of neighborhoods.
So,
But that system is expensive. It needs 3 employees per truck, and over time, it really beats up the alleys themselves, causing infrastructure damage. The city's proposal was basically, let's switch to curbside pickup. It's cheaper, more efficient, only needs 1 employee per truck.
makes sense financially, huge cost savings, but massive pushback from residents,
Right.
especially those whose neighborhoods were designed around alley access.
Exactly. Residents argued, hey, my house wasn't built for this. I don't have a front driveway to easily roll these big bins out to the curb. They felt it was impractical and unfair.
So what did the city do?
To try and move forward without just completely alienating a big chunk of the population, the city staff came up with a hybrid approach. This was crucial. The idea was to transition those blocks where most homes do have front driveways suitable for curbside, while keeping alley service for the older areas where front pickup is genuinely difficult or impossible.
Compromise based on practicality.
Right. It's an example of operational pragmatism trying to find a middle ground with community resistance, driven by those real operational constraints like facility capacity and the higher cost of alley service.
This constant pressure efficiency versus resident needs. Limited resources, it seems to be driving a bigger shift in how the city manages its money overall.
Yeah, Dallas is moving towards implementing priority-based budgeting, or PBB. This is a really significant management change. It moves away from the old way of doing things, which was basically just tweaking last year's budget numbers up or down a bit.
Incremental budgeting.
Yeah, right. PBB tries to align resources directly to specific programs based on current community priorities, like those identified in the survey and the city's strategic goals. It forces the city departments to justify their programs based on outcomes and relevance, not just historical spending. It's a way to admit we can't fund everything equally and ensure money flows to what citizens value most, like police and infrastructure.
Beyond the yearly budget cycle, there's that huge looming financial monster that many cities face: deferred maintenance.
Ugh, yeah, it's an astronomical hidden liability in many places, just kicking the can down the road on essential repairs and replacements. The city's plan to tackle this is multi-pronged. First, obviously, they need to consistently strengthen funding for maintenance. No more skipping it when times get tough.
Easier said than done, probably.
Probably. Second, they're exploring setting up an internal service fund model for maintenance. This is kind of an accounting mechanism, takes a couple of years to plan, but the goal is to make the true full cost of maintaining assets transparent and build reserves specifically for it. And third, critically, they're proposing to prohibit any new agreements, say, taking over maintenance of a new park built by a developer, unless there's dedicated, identified funding for that future maintenance secured right from the start.
Stop digging the hole deeper.
That's the idea. Stop committing to future costs without knowing how you'll pay for them. It's the only way to prevent that deferred maintenance backlog from just growing forever.
What about the debt side? The city's looking at potentially large future bond programs, maybe $1.2 billion. Can they handle that without raising property taxes for debt service?
Well, the city projects that they can, but it relies on some key assumptions holding true. Primarily, they need continued growth in property values, which increases the tax base, and they need to keep paying off existing debt on schedule.
Right. As old debt rolls off, it creates capacity for new debt.
Exactly. It's a careful balancing act, managed through long-term financial forecasts. It's feasible, assuming the economy cooperates, but it requires discipline.
Okay, one last operational challenge from the Dallas sources, and this one touches on social equity versus financial realities. The debate around a living wage for city employees.
Yeah.
The city proposed a minimum wage of $19.50 an hour.
Right. But then you have external calculations, like the one from MIT's living wage calculator, which put a true living wage for that specific region significantly higher, somewhere between $22 and $23 an hour.
A noticeable gap.
A real gap. And this creates genuine tension politically and ethically. Should the city pay what the market bears for certain jobs, especially maybe part-time seasonal ones like lifeguards, to stay competitive? Or should it aim to pay a higher living wage to ensure its own employees can actually afford to live reasonably in the city they work for?
And the argument for the higher living wage is that just looking at market rates misses the point of equity, right?
Absolutely. Advocates argue the city has a kind of moral obligation to make sure its workers aren't struggling to cover basic costs like housing, food, and healthcare in that region, regardless of what, say, a private pool company pays its lifeguards. This debate, like the sanitation one, really shows where the hard financial constraints of running a city clash directly with the desire to improve well-being, both for citizens and for the city's own workforce.
Okay, let's broaden our view again, look internationally. We see other cities using data not just for, optimizing garbage trucks, but for more proactive planning around well-being and sustainability. Rotterdam's approach to getting denser sounds interesting.
Yeah, Rotterdam is really focused on achieving sustainable densification. They want to basically double the number of people living in the inner city, but without making life worse for everyone.
Tricky balance. How do they use data?
They use something called transition management and lots of GIS mapping tools. This lets them show stakeholders concrete data like, if we implement this greening policy, here's the potential CO2 reduction. They set very specific, measurable goals.
Like the trees and parks.
Exactly. Their goal is incredibly specific. Add 5,000 new trees to cover 90 hectares of land and ensure that every single home has a park within a 250-meter walk. Using data maps is critical for them to test these strategies, see if they're feasible, and manage everyone's expectations along the way.
And Alicante in Spain is using social media data in a kind of clever bottom-up way.
Yeah, it's an interesting example of what some call informational urbanism. Planners there are actually using the georeference data that people voluntarily upload from fitness tracking apps like Strava Tracks for runs and bike rides using GPS.
So they're looking at where people actually exercise.
Right. By analyzing all these aggregated, anonymized data trails, they get really valuable, non-intrusive insights into how citizens actually use the city's paths, roads, and parks. They can see popular routes, maybe identify areas that feel unsafe or inaccessible because nobody goes there.
And use that to plan better.
Exactly. It helps inform policies to create more inclusive, accessible public spaces based on how people are already organically using the city, rather than just guessing or relying on infrequent surveys.
Finally, let's touch on Dhaka, Bangladesh. It serves as an almost extreme example of urban challenges, where big data analysis can really highlight critical needs.
Dhaka is a megacity, incredibly dense, and it has only about 8.5% tree cover, which is way, way below the recommended ideal of 20% for urban areas.
Wow, yeah, that's low.
Extremely low. And data analysis there showed something important. In the really small, super high density neighborhoods, there's enormous demand for green space, but often terrible access to it.
So the need is highest where the supply is lowest.
Precisely. And crucially, the analysis linked that high demand and poor access directly to the size of the vulnerable population living in those dense areas. So the data doesn't just show, hey, we need more parks. It highlights a severe environmental inequity issue that demands really targeted urban planning interventions to help those specific communities. Hashtag Outers Outtrip.
Wow. We have covered an incredible amount of ground today. Everything from Julius Caesar's ancient cipher
Right back to the beginning.
all the way to the very modern, very real challenge of making sure a vulnerable community in Dhaka has safe access to a park. And connecting it all is this thread of data, security, and governance.
It really is. And the core takeaway, I think, is that a city's ability to function effectively, to actually promote the well-being of its residents, it hinges completely on having secure, reliable, and intelligently managed systems and data.
Yeah.
We saw how fundamental that safety experience is for citizens in smart cities. Security, in this whole context, it isn't just about firewalls and passwords anymore. It's about the foundational elements of a decent, sustainable urban life, that feeling of safety, the usefulness of services, the convenience of interaction.
It's truly this comprehensive challenge, isn't it? Spanning from the silicon chip in an IoT sensor to the asphalt on a city street, right up to the legal liability sitting in the C-suite or the mayor's office.
And managing that vast spectrum of risk requires that constant vigilance, that due diligence we talked about, at every single level.
Which brings us right back to where this whole conversation started, the importance of securing those individual endpoints, the devices themselves.
Absolutely.
So one last time, we want to appreciate the support of our sponsors, who remind us that strong security really does begin at the micro level, in our own environments. Thank you to www.securiat.house for helping secure the connected devices in your home, and to www.securiatoffice.world for supporting the complex security needs of modern businesses.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe leave you, the listener, with one final thought to chew on. It sits right at that tricky intersection of, efficient algorithms and messy human governance.
Okay, lay it on us.
If we know, based on the research, that a significant chunk of well-educated, informed citizens are still deeply worried about the privacy and security implications of smart city tech.
Right, the 11-13%.
Exactly. And yet, at the same time, we're increasingly relying on AI, on complex data models like spatial econometrics, to prioritize risks, to decide where police go, even to drive budget decisions based on predicted outcomes.
Yeah, the push for data-driven everything.
So the question is, what new mechanisms, what new checks and balances do we need to create to make absolutely sure that human input, ethical oversight, and genuine public trust remain truly central, not just a side note, but central to how we govern ourselves using all this powerful data?
That tension finding the balance between data-driven efficiency and essential human oversight and values.
That, I think, is the defining challenge for the secure, smart, and hopefully just city of tomorrow.
A perfect place to leave it. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.